morning, students, and happy Monday. So today we are continuing with different kinds of charts and graphs. And today we are going to learn about circle graphs. So after you complete your review exercises and speed drills, let's read the directions and find out how to interpret this circle graph. So it says, a circle graph shows the relationship between the parts to the whole and to each other. And I will explain that a little later. Number 1, read the title. Number 2, understand the meaning of the numbers, or in this case, we have percentages. Study the data. Answer the questions. So, here for our circle graph, we have an example of a monthly family budget with a total income, monthly income of $2,000. So remember, study the numbers. We have here 2,000, and then we have some percentages. Now always remember that when you have a circle graph, and the circle graph has percentages in it, that the percentages will all equal 100. So here we have a car expense, that's 10% of the income. So we're pretending that this is a family budget. The income's 2,000, so 10% of 2,000 goes to a car payment. And later, you will determine what 10% of 2,000 is if you haven't already. Then 12% goes into savings, so 12% of the $2,000 goes into savings. Another 10% goes to clothing. 20% goes to the house payment, so like rent or mortgage. 23% goes to food, and 25% goes to other expenses. So all of these percentages equal $2,000, and also all of these percentages equal 100% of the income. And if that sounds a little bit confusing so far, don't worry, because once we start with our questions, you will start realizing that it's quite easy to interpret this graph. So of course, we're going to do the first two samples together. The first sample says, what percent of the family budget is used for food? That's pretty easy because it says it right away that 23% of the $2,000 budget goes to food. So we're going to put 23%. Remember, after starting on number 1, to use the answer column. For the second sample, it says, which part of the budget requires the most expense? So, after looking at all of the percentages, which is the most expensive, or where does most of the money go? And after looking, we see that 25% goes to other expenses. And we can easily see it because this is the biggest piece of our circle chart. So, which part of the budget? It would be other expenses. And I would just write it a little bit small here, or right under it, because from now on we will start on our answer column. Now, those two were pretty easy because all you had to do was take a look at the circle graph. But some of them you may have to add, subtract, multiply, and maybe even divide. So I'm going to just pick a random question to answer that's a little bit more challenging so that you can understand what I mean when I say that you might have to do another operation to figure out your answer. So for example, it says, for number 1, what percentage of the budget is used to pay for food and clothing? So you would look at the percentage for food, look at the percentage for clothing, and add those numbers together to get your percentage for both. So I'm not going to actually do it, but I'm just showing you how to do it. For number 2, it'll say, after the car payment and house payment are paid, what percent of the budget is left? So as you can see, that requires a little bit more thinking. So you'd have to subtract the car payment, subtract the house payment, then decide how many are left. And of course, we can go over this over our Zoom session or small group, but just be prepared to do a little bit of critical thinking when looking at your circle graph for today. And here for Language Arts for Monday, we are continuing on with some review on parts of speech. So this is just going over the same concepts that we've been learning about parts of speech and abbreviations. So what you're going to do at the beginning of 157 is it says to identify the part of speech of each word in the following sentences by writing the abbreviation above it. So you're not going to do every single word, but the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, and if you do catch an adverb, you can go ahead and write it. So what you're going to do is write either N, V, or A, D, J on top of these words in these sentences. So let's do number 1 as an example. Punctuation marks are the traffic signs and signals along the reader's road. So where are the nouns, the verbs, and the adjectives in this sentence? So we can see here that punctuation marks are a thing, right? They're not a person or a place. So you could write N either in the middle of punctuation marks or right on top of marks. But punctuation marks are a thing. R. Now remember that R is one of our very important helping verbs because it is being something. It is a state of being. So we would write V here. The traffic signs. Are traffic signs a person, place, or thing? Well, this one can be a little tricky, but I won't be too picky about it. So, a traffic sign is a thing, but more specifically, a sign is a thing, but a traffic sign has an adjective because it is describing the sign. What kind of sign? A traffic sign. So in the following sentences, if I notice that you miss an adjective or two because it can be so tricky, we will go over it together, of course. So don't worry too much, but definitely try your best to identify the parts of speech. And then here we have signals. Signals is a noun, it's a thing. Along the reader's road. The reader's road. What kind of road? The reader's road. So this is another example of this. Here we have a noun, which is road, but it is not just a road. It could have said along the road, but it says reader's road. And because the word reader is describing road, it is considered an adjective in this sentence. And we went over this a few weeks ago, but of course it can be confusing because in general, a reader would be a noun because a reader is a person. But in this case, it's describing a noun. So if you were to go back to our unit on adjectives, you would remember that when it's describing a noun, it turns from a noun to an adjective. So you only have 4 more like this to identify the parts of speech, but of course we can go over this together in small group. Then on the bottom, or in the middle I should say, where it says diagrams, it says to underline the subjects once and verbs twice. We've been doing this all year, so that should be quite easy. Then you're going to put parentheses around the prepositional phrases. So again, we've been doing prepositional phrases for a very long time, and we've been diagramming them all year. So these should be quite easy to do, although I know that diagramming takes a little bit of time. So if you took the time and energy to watch this guide and this video instead of trying to do it all on your own, as you should be doing, then you'll see that I'm going to allow you to diagram every other one. 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So on notebook paper for the third exercise, you only have to diagram numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, because I consider that diagramming can take some time and we've been doing it all year. Here on the bottom for possessives, you're going to rewrite the following sentences on your paper using the possessive form to show ownership. So we've been doing this more recently. So just remember, for number 1 as an example, it says the boots belonging to Jody are muddy. So when we make that possessive, we're going to make sure that we take our subject and make it possess the task or possess the nouns. So Jody's boots are muddy. And of course, as we learned, this is a much simpler way of saying this expression. We wouldn't normally say the boots belonging to Jody. So to make these sentences possessive, we learned how to do that. Just make sure that you're using your apostrophes correctly. On the very bottom for write, it says to write your favorite Bible story in your own words as you would tell it to a friend. You may use your Bible to look up the spellings of names and places. So just go ahead and write a paragraph at least about your favorite Bible story. Don't worry too much about how it looks or if your grammar is perfect. Just write it as if you were sharing it with a friend. Like the parable of the fish, something like that. Like, hey friend, let me tell you a story about my favorite Bible story or my favorite Bible parable. And then just write from there without trying to correct it so much. It's just to continue practicing your creative writing skills. So here for our spelling for this week, for today starting Monday, you have your definitions assignment. So in your schedule, you don't have your book work just yet. You are just going to write your definitions for your pattern words, and as always suggested, write your vocabulary definitions on a sheet of paper, because your vocabulary definitions are always going to help with your vocabulary exercise that usually falls on Tuesday or Wednesday. So today, I'm just going to go over the pronunciation of all of our list words. And if you want to go one day ahead and complete your first assignment in your book, that's up to you. But just for your scheduled assignment, I'm going to go over the pronunciation. Tomorrow, Tuesday, I will go over our pattern word assignment. And then just as a side note, for Wednesday, I will be going over your normal vocabulary assignment. But on Thursday, I'm going to condense both the Thursday and Friday assignments so that you don't just have one assignment listed on YouTube for Friday. So on Friday, as you will see, you will have a math test and you will have a spelling assignment. But because your math test is based on all of the information you've already learned, there will not be a YouTube video on it. There will just be small groups. So make sure that you keep in mind that I'm going to include Friday's spelling guide in Thursday's video, since Friday is a half day as well. Okay, so this week's pattern words are format, uniformity, conformed, transformed, rupture, abruptly, interruption, obstruct, structure, instructor, destruction, constructed. Your content words are solar, eclipse, corona, nuclear, magnetic, prominence, photosphere. Our vocabulary words are postscript, prescription, determination, exterminate. So notice how our words are becoming just a little more challenging. So make sure you really are learning your definitions and pronouncing them correctly. Tomorrow we will go over our Latin root words and our pattern word assignment.